Welcome to season 3 of Malevolent Autopsy. I'm your host, Queen. I use she, her pronouns, and I am so excited to be here with you all. Now, let me warn you, the show contains major spoilers for everything in Malevolent as of the day this episode is published, so if you're not caught up, I'm not liable. Before we get started tonight, I'd like to ask my lovely co-host, what part of Arthur's body are you betting on getting injured this week?
Howdy, hello, Vol Control here, he, him pronouns, and this week, I don't know, it's too much pressure. It's the final week. It's the final chapter. Can I, can I phone a friend? Um, I, I believe we have an expert on the line. Hey, friend, are you there? Would you be so kind as to introduce yourself, and you can tell us what part of Arthur's body you're betting on getting injured this week?
Sure. I am Liz, she, her, and given how high up he is, given the center of mass of a human male, and given that he's likely to fall, by my best guess, I would take a significant head injury.
That is an excellent guess, and it sounds far more grounded in reality than I would have picked, so I applaud you as always. Welcome, Liz. Thank you so much for joining us.
No problem.
We would expect nothing less than a highly technical reasoning behind which part of Arthur's body is getting injured.
Yes.
Thank you again for coming on. Liz is a very long time member of the community, of the Invictus community, of Malevolent, general lore master, knows everything all the time, extremely beloved, smart, kind, and very funny, in my opinion, has been kind of a big staple around these parts. Liz, when did you get into Malevolent?
I believe I started listening to it in July of 2022, and I got caught up in August, joined the Patreon the same day I got caught up. And so my very first vote was chapter 122.
Oh my
That's
God.
crazy to think about.
That's so That's so long ago. I mean, maybe not in like the relative time of the cosmos, but like for the Invictus community, we've never had anyone on that has been here for so long. And you are also generally considered an expert in all things tied to like the Call of Cthulhu games as they relate to Malevolent and all of that, correct?
Usually, yeah. I'm probably the longest running lore master currently. There were lore masters before me, but they have since left the community. So I'm the longest running right now. I think Nikki would have been immediately after me in terms of joining and like getting into the Call of Cthulhu games that I'm aware of. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, hey, it's a very big deal. I mean, I know that, thank you, Faye did point out we did have Yami on for the first autopsy episode. I think Yami
Yes.
it was before you, correct?
Yes. I believe Yami was. I think they joined in season 2, I want to say, but they didn't join the voting side of things until early season 3. So they do predate me.
Yeah, wow. I mean, I'm flabbergasted, and I know that you've seen a lot of change and a lot of movement, and you've seen the fandom grow. Do you remember around how many people were voting when you joined?
I was around the time where it was consistently starting to go over 100 votes,
Oh,
and
wow.
not every vote that I was participating
But
in.
only just.
Yeah, only just because I think there were some votes very early on in my voting career that had like 90 and 80 because there was just like an off week or something. So
Wow. That's wild to think about.
it could get very swingy in the votes back then because you'd like one person changing the vote would be like change it by a percentage point or more.
Oh, yeah, that's very true. It's only like 100 people. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I appreciate you coming on. I want to explain to the public we are doing a little bit of a different kind of episode because for the first time in years, maybe ever, question mark, we don't have a chapter of Malevolent to cover because season 6 is ending and we're all going to listen to chapter 300 together, public and patrons. So on the 30th We will all be gathered together to do that, but we don't have any content in the week between, so we are going to talk about voting. And Liz, being such a veteran, I thought would be an excellent person to talk with, because if you've listened to early episodes of Autopsy, I've kind of had a character arc, and there's been some growth. I used to like rant and rave about how frustrating it was to be in the polls with Liz, because Liz has some of the most well thought out, well constructed, resource rich, quote heavy arguments in polls that are pulled from such good like logic and sound reasoning as somebody who's been here so much longer than I have. And so people would just see Liz type multiple paragraphs and vote for whatever Liz was saying, because
Well-cited sources.
spoiler alert, a lot of the times Liz is right. But also because people tend to believe in, like, having sources instead of yelling about how much they like arguing. So I used to be very competitive with Liz, and I had a lot of big feelings at that time. Things have simmered down a little bit, and I think Liz and I have had some really great conversations about voting, the nature of it, how people vote, what the mechanics are throughout the story. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. We still do have voice submissions. I also asked the community how they felt about voting, and we will get to that in a little
We
bit.
got a deluge of responses, so.
Yes, I'm very excited. So, with that being said, Liz wrote a beautiful Word document that I have pulled up right now. It's an amazing 3 pages long in Times New Roman. I'm so delighted. Like, this is perfect, and I'm very excited to get into it. This is going to be a wonderful conversation, and I think it's very important to listen to, especially from the mouth of somebody who has been here for 4 years now, Liz.
Just shy of that, I think. I think I'm at 3.5.
Wow.
Because
Crazy.
I just passed 4 years at my job, and
Huh.
I didn't start listening to Malevolent until I was 6 months into my job.
And I think that it's especially cool to have Liz on to talk about the evolution of the voting culture, especially because I think that Liz has been part of that over her time within the Discord and in poll chat.
Yeah, that's possible. I don't feel like it, but I suppose it's possible.
So let's jump into it. So actually, one of the things that I brought up last week, and I think I've brought up several times before actually on Autopsy, is the fact that there was an evening during a vote in season 5 where I was musing on why a vote that we made didn't go the way I thought it would go. I thought it was the wrong vote, and I was so confused because I had been so sure that it was the right one. And Liz happened to be awake because I'm a night owl, and Liz is a night owl for career reasons. And we had a great conversation, and I see that you have quoted yourself in that conversation. That was on 11/12/24. My God, that feels like forever ago.
Yeah, I believe that was the aftermath of whether we stayed to or check in with the friar or went directly to the, I forget, like the little den or whatever the little room we were going to
Yeah.
go meet up with everybody was. And we chose ostensibly wrong to go back to the room without waiting for the friar. And we got yelled at by Booth John. And I do remember you being confused and maybe a little bit upset about it, and you were trying to like puzzle out like what we were supposed to get out of that vote. And in the course of that discussion, because I think you were struggling with it, sometimes the vote is structured in such a way that we're supposed to vote one way, and the logic we're supposed to use to get to that vote is one way, and this one was completely different from what you had been expecting.
Yes.
And I forget what you said to me that triggered me to like say like, no, I don't always think that the votes are all based on the same underlying logic. But I know I responded to you by like trying to come up with a grand unified theory of poll voting is, by my own estimation, a fool's game, because I don't think there is one. I think there is merely Harlan and the myriad ways he might utilize that format to experiment with story form, to play with theme, to provide structure for an investigation or explanation. which he is doing at any given time is anybody's guess. Sometimes there are multiple layers to it, sometimes there's not.
Yeah, and I really liked the idea that there are multiple different methods, which I know we'll get into a little bit later, but it really helped to reframe not just the way I saw voting, but also the depth and complexity of it became so much more exciting because it's not just a choice that you can consistently make if you understand a couple of core themes like a video game, but it's something that is constantly evolving. It almost feels like, if I were going to keep with the video game thread, like procedurally generated. There's not always going to be the same set of rules, but you are still going to have to keep making choices. So you have to not only figure out what the right choice is, but also how you're supposed to determine what that right choice is. And that's part of the game too, in a way. And I love the way that you outlined it here as a choose your own adventure, but it's very based on the DM running it, which is Harlan.
Yeah. I've occasionally, in less fancy words, just said it's kind of like we're trying to read Harlan's mind sometimes.
Yeah.
And sometimes we manage it and sometimes we don't.
Well, and Harlan is such a is mercurial the right word, person that at any given time he is focusing on a different aspect when it comes to votes and trying to divine what it is this week that he is expecting us to pull from as far as things that have been outlined in the past, or the way that we were taught to approach certain elements of the story changes from week to week, and so it's always a challenge.
And I do remember there was a time, I think it might have even been around when I first joined, which is gutsy for me because I do think it was for a season 4 finale vote, maybe. I remember saying, like, he was talking to the audience and he said something and it triggered me to say, you've known yourself your whole life. I just got here. I don't know you. Like, how am I supposed to know how you think and what you should be, what we should be voting based on what you're thinking like? But that is where history comes in. That is where it does pay to be a person who's been around a lot, who has studied the patterns and picked up on the different ways that not only Harlan thinks, but like the way he translates that into writing and what choices were given. I've said before, it's such a difficult task to figure out where to put choices in a story this sprawling, and I think he does it very well, but it's also such a challenge as a voter to figure out, okay, this is the point in the story that is allowed to make some kind of a change, whether it's just in flavor text or it's genuinely a choice that alters the course of the narrative. I think you, having been here a long time, and not just that, but having studied so much of Harlan's other content, has really given you such a valuable insight into how things work.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an understatement. It's a very difficult to try to glean Harlan's mind from just listening purely to Malevolent. You can do it, I think. It's possible, but it's a lot easier when you go back and listen to, say, him talk about his philosophy as a game master in the Invictus Academy and have him spell out how he like creates NPCs and how he structures mysteries and how he will ask questions of his players to get certain things out of them. That makes it a lot easier in some ways.
Yeah, and I know that you reference a lot of Harlan being a GM, and I think that a casual listener, even a casual voter, may not even see it that way. I know I didn't when I first started voting. I didn't really see it as an RPG or like a D&D game, or I didn't even know what Call of Cthulhu was when I joined Malevolent. So like I was very green to everything, and I remember thinking, well, it can't be much of a GM position if you're only allowed to make 2 options and there's no ability to talk back, and it doesn't work the same way that I was used to like D&D running. But it very much is. I mean, you play Malevolent.
Yeah.
He may control the story, but you do play Malevolent.
Yeah, when I first started listening to Malevolent, way back in season 1, when I was hearing the dice rolls, like my ears perked up, and even before the dice rolls were audible, I got the feeling that I was playing a video game, and I think that that is the nature of having this dynamic where you have an entity describing what you're doing and describing like what's ahead of you. It felt very video game, and then as the dice rolls got introduced, or I heard them for the first time, I realized like, oh, there's some kind of win fail probability here, like to see how well we do anything. And it wasn't until later that I found out that there were votes, and that really changes how you listen to the story, and especially when you become a voter, changes your relationship to the narrative.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely does.
I love this little paragraph you wrote about how Malevolent originated and your bullet points following that. Can you explain those a little bit to me?
So the paragraph that Queen is referring to is the polls are best understood through the frame of being a player sat at a virtual table across from a game master, where the poll is not the difference between two dialogue options in a video game or the choice at the bottom of a page in a choose your own adventure book, but instead a limited open dialogue between the player and the game master collaborating on how the campaign should proceed, while also providing real tensions and consequences in those choices, because this is a show that heavily draws on the genres of mystery and horror. So I was thinking through that in part because I have gone back and listened to the old Call of Cthulhu games, which are not necessary to understand Malevolent for sure, but they really, really drive home that this is a continuation of that same world, and that Harlan was initially coming at this kind of through the lens of a game master very early on to a degree. It took time though for me to like actually have that click that this was what was going on.
Yeah.
Like, so when I first came in as a brand new baby voter back in season 3, I was also kind of trying to gauge how this was supposed to work, because I didn't know the Call of Cthulhu games existed when I first joined. Most people don't.
It's hard to imagine a time where you didn't know anything.
It's so true.
I did not know anything. I came in and I had listened to Malevolent. I did not know that there were other things involved with it. I just thought it was a one-off podcast. I came in like ready to be the most clever person in the room because I have a very high opinion of my own intelligence, and surely I could make the best possible decisions. And also I'm very super anxious, so I was also trying to gauge like how I was supposed to go about this based on everybody else that was in poll chat at the time.
Right.
At the time, the general sense that I was getting out of it was that you really needed to focus on the little tiny details in a given chapter. Just really focus on those. Those were the only clues you needed. And also at the same time, they would have big spiels of pros and cons between like, if we did this, would Arthur be more or less safe? There was like big pros and cons lists that would happen a lot of times, but it was very focused on the chapter itself and very little on going back and looking at the story as a whole. And nobody that I saw was drawing on the older games, because I think at the time there was maybe a tiny handful of people who even knew about them, and only one might have been active in poll chat a little bit.
Wow. That's such a change in culture.
Yeah, that's so interesting to me because I feel like it's been so prevalent that Harlan has planted these seeds. Even if you're just looking at Malevolent, he's planted these seeds, but I guess some of them didn't really come to fruition until like post
Hmm.
season 3.
Yeah, I think that was probably part of it, was that up to that point, I don't think we'd really like, if I've listened back to like season 1 through early season 3, there really wasn't the sense that this was like going to be a story where there's lots and lots of things being pulled forward through time. Like, that's just not something that happened a lot in season 1 and
Yeah.
season 2. So I understand why people didn't really have the same desire to have the longer view, because that just wasn't something that had needed to happen, I don't think, up to that point. So it wasn't until later that I started kind of cluing in that there would be a need for that. I also hadn't yet figured out it wasn't pure logic choices early on. I really tried hard to do pure logic choices for a while. It didn't work. Season 3 was a really bad time to need to want to do logic choices because season 3 was very, very theme heavy, very, very rule of cool heavy at times, very character driven. So for me, that was I was not at the height of my power at season 3 for a multitude of reasons. But it was also a really good time for me to get introduced to that sometimes it did matter like what the character needed,
Right.
because like there was discussions with because back then, for those who do not know, Harlan was a lot more active in poll chat. Like there was a time where Harlan and Joe would be in poll chat and talk to us on a fairly regular basis. And Ren is pointing out the exact vote I was about to discuss. There was a vote where we were supposed to decide whether or not Arthur was going to kill Larson or not, or kill Uncle or not. I think it was more in terms of it was aimed at Larson. Arthur
Mhm.
wanted to kill Larson. He did not yet know that Larson was not at the estate.
Right.
And we were given an option as voters to try to pull him back from that, like because we were kind of voting for John to try to do that.
Mhm.
And the voters at the time, myself included, really, really were into the ethics and morality of that. And we were very strongly like, we have to try to pull Arthur back to the light and not let him dive into his bloodlust openly. And I remember very distinctly being on vacation where I don't have internet service, and I didn't have cell service even really there, but I happened to, if I climbed up a hill a quarter mile back in the woods, I could get cell service.
Oh
So
my
I'm
God.
I'm on the top of this hill watching the poll chat because I couldn't stand not knowing what was going on. And Harlan being present that particular day, I got lucky to see him talking to us, and he was discussing like, why do you think that that's what's going to happen here? Like, why do you think you can do that? You have you considered that because you're going to make John like try to get in Arthur's way, that instead of it helping Arthur stop where he's headed here, it'll just make Arthur turn on John. Like, and are you sure you want to go that way? And that ultimately flipped that vote. But yeah, that was something that was a lot more common back then, was for Harlan to come into poll chat and kind of recontextualize things for us, especially when we were coming at it from kind of the wrong angle. Not that we didn't have a point in what we were saying, but just that that wasn't what we were supposed to be getting out of the vote.
Right. This wasn't save Arthur from a mental breakdown or not. This was how do you want to do this mental breakdown?
Yes. Yes. That was exactly what it was.
Well, I do think that the limited experience I've had and the logs I've read of Harlan speaking to voters about votes, I think it's important to stress, especially now if he ever does it, which is pretty much never, he doesn't come in saying, "You guys are wrong. Why are you voting this way?" He comes in asking people why they're voting the way they're voting, and he tries to understand where we're coming at it from, and then he will pivot and ask you multiple series of questions to get you to open up your viewpoint and to understand where you're coming from, but also to get you thinking about a different avenue.
When I was a kid, I actually started grade school in Montessori school, and that was the way that we were taught in Montessori. You don't just teach, you invite the student to ask questions. You invite them to get curious and figure it out on their own. You help lead them to the answer rather than telling them this is right or this is wrong. And it's a different way of learning and approaching learning material and critical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is some of the most, I don't know how to say it, but it's enriching in a very specific way to have somebody engage you in a very deep discussion about why you think the way you do, and it is such a good practice for just life, and it was so valuable to me because I got to experience that during the do you go willingly vote, where Harlan was like, so what's up? Because we were all over the place with that vote and we were not getting the point that was trying to be made. And he knew the rest of the story and we didn't. So he had a lot more context than we did. And for us, it made sense. But because he knew how things were going to go, I think it was very apt of him to say, yeah, you can make this decision, but you should think about it a little bit more and maybe in a few different ways. So I love hearing that he has always kind of done that. And I'll probably, like you said, definitely a lot more often when the crowd was approachable and not 600 people.
I mean, we're over 650 now, which is insane.
Yeah, the numbers for this vote are
Mm-hmm.
crazy.
Yeah.
Hydrus, so I just sorry, this made me laugh. One of the things he says during the postseason Q&A about Larson's motivations and where he's coming from sticks with me always. Is he being genuine or is he doing it to be kind of a fuck? I do remember that from the Q&A. By the way, quick check-in. We have 665 votes right now in the 299 poll. We are one away from a 666,
So close.
which I know some people have been very excited about.
Yeah, can we get that one vote before I get to close the vote on Monday? Because we'll take the snapshot on Monday.
Oh gosh. Yes, oh my god, I didn't even mention Liz is like the poll record keeper. Any of the pie charts that you see on the Malevolent Wiki, that's all Liz. And we have screenshots and stuff to kind of solidify the exact numbers every week because of Liz. So, like, if you've ever been so grateful to be able to see stats on the wiki, it's Liz.
Well, it's me post season 4. Prior to that, I think Tony was keeping track of that.
Oh, yes, that's right.
But yeah, so recently it has been me.
Liz isn't just the lore keeper, but the stat wizard as well.
Yeah, making good use of that math degree.
So, of course you have a math degree.
Minor in math, but
Oh my god. So, let's talk about how many like methods you would say are used to divine what the poll, like how we should make our poll decision.
oh boy. So I kind of on a whim very quickly just came up with a handful of them that I seem to encapsulate most votes. So there's themes, there's morals, lore and logic I think kind of go together, narrative driven votes, character driven votes, votes that are about exploration or investigation, which I think also go together. And then there's a handful of special votes that don't really fall into any kind of category.
Throw some examples at me.
So, themes. These might kind of overlap at times with character driven choices. A really big one would have been chapter 214, become whole versus become entirely your own. This is from the witch episode. So the decision being made by John to either become entirely his own person or to agree with the witch and become whole on whatever terms that meant for her. Also, hold on versus let go votes probably were themes alongside of basically the entirety of, I forget what part this was, but chapters 251 to 254, which were holding out against Lilith's attempts to try to make us despair and willingly give her the Black Stone during her nightmare scenario that she had going on. Or actually, no, it wasn't a nightmare scenario. That was the following part. That was her speaking to them at the fire as it was raining.
Oh, that's right.
I keep forgetting that was not a nightmare scenario. That was that was just her talking to them.
That was real. That was real. And those thematic votes always feel bigger. And sometimes the answer is really easy, like choosing between become whole or become entirely your own. Easy, slam dunk. But some of those hold on versus let go votes were really challenging this season.
Yeah. I think to this day we will be arguing over whether at various points let go versus hold on, depending on which chapter we're referring to, was the correct vote.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I have my opinions. Other people will definitely have different opinions.
Yeah, definitely. I've already seen it.
Character-driven votes. So those would be like take the deal versus do nothing. That's chapter 171. So that was when we were in the basement tied up by the butcher and we were being offered the option for Scratch to help us escape at a cost, or not take the deal and try to get out of the binds on our own, I guess. I don't know what would have. Well, actually, I do know what would have happened there because Harlan told us after the fact.
Oh, did
But
he?
yes, did you guys not know that?
I don't think so.
No.
What did Harlan say would have happened?
Okay, so this is a very, very rare occasion of Harlan told us in poll chat what would have happened had we refused Scratch's offer. And he told us that had we refused it, we would have gotten Larson torturing Arthur. He would not have escaped. Daniel
Whoa.
and Oscar would have died.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Everybody would have died and we would have gotten Arthur tortured. Damn, that's crazy.
Yes.
I feel like I already could name off the top of my head like 3 specific people who are pissed that didn't happen.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some people who are like, that would have been really cool, but I'm very happy that we chose the way that we did. And we were told after that whole part was done that we did bowl a perfect game. That specific part we voted correctly each time, and each time had we done something different, we would have had varying degrees of bad happen.
Right.
And the way it said bold a perfect game makes me so badly want to do it every time. That's the problem. You tell me I can get the answer right every time and I want to do it, and when I don't, I'm sad.
But that's another thing
Yeah.
about the votes, that some of them do have like a correct answer, but not all of them. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. There's definitely votes where I strongly suspect that there is no correct answer, or there's a somewhat better but still going to have some bad things happen answer
Right.
at
Right.
best.
It's which consequences do you want to happen?
Yes. So I also had a couple other options for character driven. If you would like me to continue, since I derailed by mentioning something you guys did not
Yes.
know.
Yes.
Yes, give me the
So
others.
I could not take this one away from Queen. Chapter 191, John versus the King in Yellow, as what to introduce John to Noel as. So obviously that was very character driven for like how Arthur sees John and how John was going to get referred to. That one seems like it was very important to John. Probably also really important to how Detective Noel saw John
Yeah.
in hindsight.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
cannot imagine how that would have gone if they had said the King in Yellow at that stage. God.
Mhm.
Yeah, because they had no idea at that point that he had any history with the King in Yellow. So they would have just been like, yeah, this is the guy who tormented you for 10 years.
Yeah. And then I also come back to chapter 198, Go Willingly versus Don't Go Willingly. And there's a couple different character driven spots where you can think of this through. One of which was like, what kind of person is Larson? And the other one is like Harlan talking to us
Yeah.
about like what would Charlie want in this situation.
The fact that I remember so distinctly him saying, what would Charlie think of Arthur doing this? And at the time, because I wasn't me yet, I was like, in my head going, I don't care what Charlie would think. Like, what does that matter to me? I barely know this guy. Because I didn't know that he was the best in the world.
I mean, I did.
It was a different time. You were a different woman.
I want to be clear. Everyone associates me with like being this big fan of Charlie, and I'm not saying I'm not. But Liz got here first,
Yes.
okay? Liz is the original queen. I don't want to take Liz's perfect title away. Liz and I are bonded in love of Noel now.
Yes, we definitely are. Although I think we came at it from different angles because I really was in like Charlie Dowd was a mystery from the Call of Cthulhu games. to be very clear.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
I wanted to know more about him because he had been in the background of those for 10 years, and I was so intrigued about what his deal was. And so finally meeting him in Malevolent was just very exciting. And then he's also incredibly charming. So that was that.
Of course. Of
So
course. He's a detective. He has to be.
I cannot imagine the experience as a fan, like knowing and being curious about this character who's not even on screen, but just gets mentioned, and then you you get him years later. Oh my God, that's like a transcendent experience.
hmm I think I'm gonna out myself a little bit as I asked about him on Tumblr to Harlan back when he was still using Tumblr, and long, long, long before he was in Malevolent proper. Like this was maybe the first bit of season 4. Like we were probably still in the train episode,
Yeah,
and I was kind of like, is like I thought he might have been the person that was killed in Witch's Mark at the in the opening,
right.
and was trying to like see if I could get that piece of information from Harlan, which did not work. Because I thought that was like if he got killed in Witch's Mark, nobody cares about that except me.
Right,
But then
right.
he gave me a very non-answer, which was for the best because obviously he had plans. But yeah,
Yes.
if you go back far enough, you can probably find me trying to find out more about Charlie Dowd long before he was introduced. Yeah. Oh, so now that we've had our moment of talking about Charlie, because of course
Our
Queen and I
Charlie
have to do
moment,
that.
yes.
I can continue on. I have other
Yes.
categories.
Well, I think I will be yelled at if I don't say, please ask Liz how she could see the fucking Matrix in season 4 because of her Call of Cthulhu knowledge and how many of her predictions came true.
Um, I I don't know how to answer that.
I think that it's just a testament to the fact that, like, Liz probably predicted it. Like that's kind of the wrap up of season 4 in my head is
Yeah.
like
So to explain that to people who don't know what's being referenced, I I predicted a lot of what happened at the end of season 4, not for the reasons that like I just like had a flash of prophecy or something, but because I knew about the stones. The stones are a big part of the Call of Cthulhu games, especially starting with Witch's Mark and continuing into Call of Cthulhu Game 2. So when the stones started coming up as a thing that was apparently the goal of Kane's deal with John, it became really, really obvious to me that this was something to do with Call of Cthulhu Game 2 because the whole point of that game is also a version of Nyarlathotep is trying to get a hold of these stones, specifically the black stone. So my guess was that Kane was trying to do something similar. And I figured, well, if he's trying to collect all of the stones, he's trying to collect whichever one is with the Order right now. But the Black Stone is not with the Order. I knew that from Call of Cthulhu Game 2 because the whole point of Call of Cthulhu Game 2 was finding out where the Black Stone was. And
Right.
in that game, we discovered that it was in medieval England. So I'm like, well, I don't think Harlan is going to change that continuity in that way. So if that's the case, then what's going to happen is we're going to do whatever we're going to do at the Order, and then we're probably going to get tossed into medieval England in order to find the Blackstone. So I predicted that season 4 would end in time travel to medieval England, or at least to medieval Europe. I wasn't entirely certain about England.
which to somebody like me who not only had no knowledge of the Call of Cthulhu games but actively was like feeling confused and lost and left out because there was so much discussion about how the Call of Cthulhu games were tying in. I like actively resisted learning anything because I was so stubborn and dumb. And I was like, guys, I don't care about the stuff that's not malevolent. And meanwhile, people are having like groundbreaking revelations over on the other side of the spectrum. So to me, not knowing anything and refusing to know anything, you all sounded insane. Like, what do you mean you're time traveling? Malevolent doesn't time travel. Like, I had no idea how you leapt there, and I didn't want to know. I, of course, would make different decisions now as a human being. We all learn and grow.
I
Right.
definitely witnessed that in real time.
I'm sorry for the ignorance and stubborn temper of past queen, but she's a little older, a little wiser, and has learned. But I do think that it is such a cool position to be in to correctly predict something that isn't just like, I bet Arthur's gonna cry in the next season, cause duh. But like actually having that map plotted out. That's very impressive, and I hope you are very proud.
That was like my shining achievement. I'm never gonna top that. Like that was it. As a lore master, you can't top it. I don't think it'll ever happen again. I think we are moving beyond what was previously existing in the Invictus archives. So I got there at the right time, and I got to do one thing that was very impressive, and I will never manage it again.
Okay, I know that we have so much left to cover. We may be skimming these, but let's at least get through the rest of the categories and maybe like one good example from each one.
Morals. I honestly think this is rarer than we want to think about it most of the time. Because I know a lot of people really get into the moral, ethical implications of votes, and
Mm-hmm.
I I think that there was a time where that was a thing. I think it's not a bad thing to discuss. I don't think it's usually the point of a vote.
I
But
totally
very,
agree.
very early on, I think it really was a thing, like in season one. I think in season one, that was when Harlan was like using that to kind of calibrate the type of character we wanted Arthur to be. And by the time I joined in season three, that was pretty well set in stone.
Yeah.
That is my opinion. I do not know that that is actually the case, but it is a thing that I've kind of termed. So you see it really a lot in season one, where like Arthur deciding whether or not to shoot Eddie, stopping to help the car or not, that was broke down on the
Mhm.
road, choosing to spare or destroy the Wraith. Even into season two, maybe a little bit, with like choosing to help Lily or free Lily or not free Lily. But I think those were the ones that were kind of setting Arthur's character. And I think the only other time since then that I think was a true moral, ethical vote, maybe, I'm not 100% certain. I know it was definitely argued this way, and I think the way Booth John responded to our choice makes me think it might have been, was returning or refusing to return the talisman to Mother Darkness. That may have been one.
Man, that was a heated one. I do remember
Yeah,
that one.
I was
Yeah.
yeah, that was one we disagreed on.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I was ultimately wrong. I stand by it only because I spent way too much of my life getting my hands on that talisman. I spent an entire night at work just typing up the argument that got us that talisman.
From the minute I agreed to pick it up, I regretted it. And so I spent every vote after
Trying to
that
get rid
trying to get rid of it and not wanting anything to do with it.
But yeah, so that's my opinion on like the concept of a vote being all about morals and ethics. I don't think those are as common anymore. I think they did exist at one time. I think they can occasionally exist. I think we tend to go too hard on that as a core point of poll chat at times.
I agree with that. I think people are really struggle to not put themselves in the shoes of a character by default. And even when they don't, I think we just as human beings, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people really struggle to put aside the moral because when you're doing like a role playing game or a very story heavy game, you'll even notice like in video games we don't question whether or not you kill the character in front of you. That's why you have a gun.
Mm-hmm.
There's obviously a shooting mechanic. You're supposed to do that. But in a role playing game like Malevolent, it feels very different. You're not
Yeah.
equipped with triggers that tell you what you're quote unquote supposed to do. I don't feel bad when I kill a monster in a video game. Why would I feel bad doing it in Malevolent? Well, that's the difference. It's a different genre, it's a different platform, and I think that really gets into people's heads a lot more often than it needs to. But frankly, I'm such a, like, what Liz is describing as these ways to determine a vote has nothing to do with how I debate them.
Mm-hmm.
If morals are going to sway you to my side, I will use morals. I don't care if they're irrelevant.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a fair way to like try to come to a decision. I just have a suspicion that that's probably not what Harlan's trying to point us to most of the time at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ren in the chat mentions in season 5 the voters letting that goddamn zombie prince bite Arthur because of quote unquote morals and quote unquote ethics. Yeah. Yeah, no, yep, I'll take that L. I'll take that L. Even John called us out for
I
that
also
one.
take that L.
John was like, "What the fuck are you doing?"
I'll take the W, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll admit to not making the best choice there. But moving on, my personal favorite, lore and logic. I love this one. Season
Of
4 was
course.
great for me. I had so much fun. In fact, I say in my notes, season 4, lots of votes that were lore and logic. But there were also a lot in season 1. A lot of season 1 was about exploring and investigating places that would have been really well known to the people at the time because they were mostly Invictus longtime listeners and they would have presumably been familiar with the Call of Cthulhu games. And a lot of the places that season 1 revisits are in fact revisiting places from Call of Cthulhu 1 and a little bit from Grimm. Harper's Hill is a location in Grimm. So there was a lot of stuff there that they could draw on if they remembered it. Season 4, you get things like the introduction of, for us Malevolent listeners, Dennis Collins, the Butcher, who I knew from Witch's Mark. In fact, I shouted really,
Oh
really,
my God.
really loudly about it during Prelude. Yeah, I freaked out in chat. Somewhere in the archives, you can probably find me having a little. I would not call it a crash out, but it was close because the Butcher is the scariest character in all of Call of Cthulhu. Like all 4 campaigns, he scares me the most.
Yeah.
Wow.
And all these people who are listening to Prelude live at the time are going, "What a cool new voice!" And I'm like, "Oh my god,
Oh no.
we're going to die. This is really bad. I cannot overstate how bad this is." And so yeah, I ended up having to. I spent like a 2-week period transcribing all of the torture scenes from Witch's Mark because I'm like, you guys need to know this.
Oh my God.
Uh,
Right,
this is
right.
what we're up against. Yeah, Kill Bill sirens, definitely.
So that's why those transcriptions exist. Ah, I see.
Yeah, those are very specific moments to
I
transcribe.
actually no, I had already started on the project to transcribe the Call of Cthulhu games before that, but I had been like patiently
Okay.
working my way through them, and I had not yet got to Witch's Mark. And once once Harlan introduced the Butcher, I was like, okay, I now know what needs to be prioritized.
Right,
So
right,
I
right,
did in fact prioritize those. So yeah, a lot of the votes regarding the Butcher were votes that, admittedly at the time it was mostly me, I was pulling on the old games to try to like, hey, this is what I know about him. This is how he's likely to respond to different things. Especially the 2 big ones for me are Chapter 199, which was Detective Dole stays behind to deal with the horde of monsters, or the Butcher stays behind. And it was
right.
overwhelming toward the Butcher to do that because I think it was obvious, and also because I'm sure everyone watched me scream about this is what he is like known for in his games. Like he does hordes.
Yeah.
He loves this crap.
Right.
But maybe the one that was more important to know the lore would have been chapter 174, which is Keep the Butcher Distracted versus Run. And that was when we were trying to decide whether to distract Butcher while Noel snuck up on him to try to save Daniel, or if we were going to like show ourselves and then get him to chase us by running away. And the way that Booth John had framed that made it seem like maybe there was a chance that the Butcher had a gun, and that if we stayed to try to distract him, the Butcher would draw it and shoot us. And he even faked us out in the like intro to the next chapter, or tried to. And I remember listening to it and calling bullshit, because I'm like, nope, I know this character well enough to know that he is not going to go loud right now. He's been yelled at for screwing up because he went loud with the shotgun and chasing Arthur all through that apartment building. And no, he's going to be sneaky this time. He's not got a gun. And I was happy that I was right.
Ugh, as
It
always.
becomes increasingly rare after season 4. And then of course you have like really heavily lore votes, like even within Malevolent itself. Probably the most obvious one ever was 244, which was where to shoot the Dark Young. Do you remember from season 1 where we read in the book?
It was so satisfying because it was like, yay, I can use my lore knowledge for this one.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my god, it was the great equalizer. I could finally go back in Malevolent and get a concrete yes or no answer out of my lore. I was like, I know everyone else also knows this, but this is an exciting time for me as somebody who knows nothing.
Yeah, that's somehow it feels like for me a lot of the, or at least I did back when there was more stuff to draw on the old lore for. Like that was how it would feel. It was like, oh yeah, I know this from thing that was not actually part of Malevolent. But yeah, so there's those type of questions too. Narrative questions, which I kind of also like fold into like rule of cool sometimes. Like, what is good for
Mhm.
the story, even if it isn't the most logical thing to do or the most sensible thing to do. Like, I remember one in particular was like going into the hidden room in Marie's house to hide because we heard Marie coming home. Like, we were given the option to back out of doing that, and
Oh, right.
it became very obvious that like the more narratively interesting thing to do was to go into the creepy room, even though it was the
Yes.
creepy unknown room that we knew nothing about. Like that was
These are, I think, maybe my least favorite types of votes. I can't stand these because I'm such a why would you go into the dark, creepy room type of person.
yeah.
I think this is how I approach so many votes, and that's why Queen gets so mad at the way that I approach votes sometimes, because I'm like,
Ugh,
but it would be more
I
interesting.
can't.
It would, I want to see what happens.
Fucking fuck.
You're voting in the tradition of a writer, I think,
That's
because
true.
that's
That's true.
also that's kind of Danny's mom's perspective. Was a
Right.
lot of when Danny would translate for us what her mother told us, that would be kind of her logic. Like, this is the more interesting, cool thing to do. Why wouldn't you do this? The other really good one was Loose the Caboose, which I don't remember the
Right.
phrasing of the actual vote, but I remember it as Loose the Caboose because that was a campaign to end all campaigns.
That was the
And
rallying
Danny's mom
cry.
weighed in on it. And Danny's mom spelled out, like, why wouldn't you do the incredibly cool thing to, like,
Yeah.
decouple the train car? Like, that is an objectively cool thing to do. And we very nearly
When do you ever get to use the word decouple?
Right.
not often. And we very nearly talked ourselves out of it because, among other things, we were concerned about the possibility of the safety mechanisms on a train, making that impossible because people in the chat were nerdy enough about trains to know that in real life that wouldn't work. And Harlan had to come in and go, I
Right.
do
Man,
operate by rule of cool. Like, trust me here.
Just so everybody's aware.
man, the way there was a moment in Malevolent history where trains became relevant, and there were people immediately who knew that there were safety mechanisms in place that would make that, like, that's the kind of deep and ridiculously convoluted thought process that goes on at D&D tables pretty fucking frequently in my experience,
Oh, for sure.
where everyone's talking about what could possibly go wrong when you open that trapdoor, even though it is literally like a rope and a piece of wood. We're talking about splinters at some point. So very much reminds me of people going overboard with how the mechanics are going to work.
Definitely sat at a D&D table for a good 30 to 45 minutes while the DM and one of the players argued about like reaching terminal velocity over a 600-foot drop and whether or not there was like a chance that you could survive the max amount of damage according to the D&D rules. It was a lot. It was a lot.
I shouldn't talk here because I am that person frequently at the table. Oh,
I knew it. I knew it.
Yeah, that tracks. But the explore and investigate style of votes, what was, I know you have both chapter 2 and 181 here. Those are so far apart.
I kind of started going through chronologically because I have, of course, my document of all the votes because, of course, I have that for
Of course you do.
Of course you do.
records
Yeah.
keeping. I mean, I actually do have to have it for record keeping purposes. But since I had it, I was going through it, and I was trying to break down like all of them that fell into different categories. I was originally going to do a statistical breakdown. I decided not to do that because I did not have enough time. Uh, and so I really quickly realized like there's a lot of these in the early episodes. Season 1, I think, was a very open world experience. Like if you're talking about it in terms of like a game, a D&D style game, later on we kind of get put more on like the railroaded, like here's the story we're being taken on, and we can only deviate so much. But very early, it was very clear that we could have chosen to go a lot of different directions. And we could have chosen to go to completely different locations and do completely different side quests than we ended up doing. So I think a lot of the early ones, like choosing to go to the bookstore versus choosing to head to the abandoned house, or the university versus the police station, or a police station versus the
Right.
coming residences, like all of those.
He really wanted us to
He
go to the
really
police
did.
station, and you can hear him talk about that in the commentaries,
Yes.
which are so valuable. Listen to the commentaries.
Yes.
Yeah, I could talk for hours about them if you let me, and I should not. But yeah, like those are the types of like votes that we got very early on, and they were about exploring the world or investigating specific tracks. And then later on, we start narrowing down when he decides that we're going to do, I think, the Blackstone storyline. He kind of puts us a
Right.
little bit more on rails at that point. But we did get a little return to that in a smaller way in 181 to 184 when we're exploring the farmhouse. Like he kind of opened it up a little bit to like, where do you want to explore in this house? Go for it. But I think those ones are pretty easy to identify that that's what you're doing, and
Right.
there's not a lot of
Yeah.
usually there's not a lot of depth to them, although you can still mess them up. The farmhouse had one that I think we kind of oopsed, and it got Oscar's arm chopped off.
Well, I mean,
Who?
considering the number of chances there were during Oscar's time with Arthur that he could have gotten like straight up killed, I think that cutting off his
Yeah.
arm was probably the best ending for Oscar.
I think we could have bowled a perfect game with him, but I think we missed it by that much. Just a little bit.
Just a little bit, just above the elbow.
Just yeah, yep. And then I had my last category, which was the kind of catch-all for votes that really don't fit anything else. So special vote types. So these were like ones that were super fun or just weird. The fun one was bread versus cheese.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot
Yep.
else to say. It was bread versus cheese. It was a reward for, I think, getting through a really difficult season. It was low stakes, as far as
Yeah.
I'm aware.
Bread.
I wish I could have been here for bread versus cheese.
Oh, that was a fun one. It was a shocking amount of discussion in the chat about that,
I can
but it
imagine.
was just all of us vibing
Yeah.
about like what we would choose. And a few people talking about the potential for lactose intolerance and what was best for people that were severely malnourished to eat directly after
Right, right.
a long period of time of starvation. Because, of course, it's poll chat. We would do that. You get ones like the Nightmare series of votes, so chapters 151 to 154. So those were part entitled The Nightmare, where Scratch takes over the booth. And at the time, we weren't 100% certain what was going on. We worked out kind of early on that it seemed like we were maybe making choices that were happening both in the dream and in the waking
Right.
world, but we really weren't sure what was going on until Arthur woke up at the end and John told us what happened. That was a fun one to be voting on because we were a little confused. 166 to 169, those were the butcher votes, which I sometimes refer to as the blind votes. So, for public listeners who have heard the butcher episode, it's very clearly from the butcher's point of view. That's all we heard. But we were still voting on what Arthur was doing. And our only context was what little bit of hints Booth John was giving us.
Sounds like a wild
So we
time.
were voting kind of blindly.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. Blood crumbs. I remember the blood crumbs. That was a fun vote. Yeah, we among other things we discussed things like whether to patch Arthur up or not, and discussed it in terms of whether or not he was going to leave behind a blood trail and whether that was a bad thing or not, or if we just really needed to get as far away from the butcher as possible and screw leaving a blood trail. But we called them blood crumbs for a good portion of Poll Chat.
Come up some really fun vocabulary in this fandom.
Yeah, I had almost forgotten about them until I think very recently somebody brought them back up again, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember just having that discussion. And then I think the last really weird set of votes, not counting like Kane votes, because Kane votes are weird in a different way, but they tend to also have
Yes.
thematic relevance. The are chapter 226 to 229, which were the unclean votes. So the ciphered votes, which I think both of you would remember. I think you were both here by that point.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we even had some of the code breakers on Autopsy.
Yeah, I forgot that not only had you guys got here by that point, you had started Autopsy by that point. I forgot.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were ciphered. The votes were all written in gibberish, and we had to spend some time trying to figure out what they meant, and we did not manage it until the very last second when it didn't matter. Because it was sleep
The
versus
infamous
sleep.
sleep
Yeah,
versus
that was
sleep.
hilarious.
Yeah. In hindsight, I was so upset that hadn't been able. I wasn't able to be more involved with that set of votes because I was on a really long stretch at work and I couldn't.
Yeah, I think I also was traveling during those votes. And so
Hmm.
I was trying to keep up with all of the code breaking, and it looked so cool. But also, it's probably for the best because I am not good at codes and ciphers. So I'm glad that other people with much bigger brains were figuring that out and sharing their process. And it was really cool to see all these code breakers come out and talk about the different ways that
Hmm.
this could be solved. And yeah, it's so cool how many different methods were tried.
Yeah, the part that makes me sad is that I recall that I actually kind of was on the right track right at the beginning. I once we got to,
Right.
oh, it's three numbers, I was like, oh, this is probably book code. And that was the last thing that I really got
Yep.
to, because I was like, well, it's probably also maybe the King in Yellow, but then we couldn't figure out which version of the King in Yellow
Which
because I had
edition?
totally
Yeah.
forgotten. I had totally forgotten, and I was here for this, that Scotty had been sent a copy.
Right.
I forgot that.
Yeah.
I frankly had no clue.
I think I was, arriving from my trip just in time for the final vote. And even though it had finally been figured out which copy of The King in Yellow it was, I did order it, and I actually have that copy of that version on my bookshelf.
Yeah, so do I. I ordered it after that.
I don't have any of that, and I also had no idea what was going on. I was definitely participating. I just had no key on the right lead. I was doing weird shit on Google Maps. I was off in left field, nowhere near the answer, but I really wanted to be part of it. So it was very much the vibe of giving your little cousin a controller that is not plugged in so they can also feel like they're playing the video game. But I do remember that in the end, Harlan did have to give us a hint by posting just wordlessly on Instagram, just the picture of the book. And like, it was so funny because it did not matter at that
No.
point.
And that's why he did it, I'm sure. That it's like, oh, I can reveal it now because it doesn't make a difference.
Oh, yeah. Right, right. Um, I think, I mean, we just got in a particularly interesting voice sub, Liz, that I want to make sure that you get to hear.
Oh dear.
So I heard you had a so-called voting expert on your show, but while you're all blindly going along with her authority, I'm here to try to shake you from your slumber about this person you've titled the Lore Wizard. How many theories has she actually gotten right in the last 4 seasons? Why does she know so much? Does she have an inside track? Has she hacked Harlan's computer? Set up cameras in his house? Sure, she says all the information is there for anyone to put together. Then why don't I hear everyone saying it? This lore wizard, your words, she's been around since chapter 122, which is season three's left, right, or back. Has anyone asked her opinion on that? Has anyone examined her voting record? Release the files, lore wizard. Did you know her very first comment in the server mentioned voting August 5th, 2022? And I quote, I've got the dreadful feeling that I've picked at an unusually good week to binge this entire podcast and then decide to join the Patreon just for the chance at getting to vote. Wake up, sheeple. Why is she so obsessed with voting? What's her agenda? I'm just asking questions, and I seem to be the only one with the guts to challenge her.
So, what do you have to say for yourself?
um. Yep. That would be Ren. That would be Ren. I mean, if you're coming in at the voices level, that's what you're there for. You're probably there because you want to vote. And then you may or may not end up hyperfixated on it.
Big Malevolent is Liz.
I can say nothing in regards to how much I do or do not know regarding my ability to mind read Harlan, because that could be incriminating. But presumably I'm not actually a telepath, because I don't think those actually exist.
Okay, well, that's good.
As far as we all know, Liz is not in Harlan's walls. As far as we all know. That I'll put that on the record.
If you did not know as a public listener, if this is somehow your first autopsy, it shouldn't be, but if it is, Liz and Ren are buddies, and that was Ren. Liz, I deeply, deeply appreciate your willingness to come on and chat. I know it is a rare and historical moment for all of us. We absolutely loved listening to you, and I mean, I can't speak for Vol, but I will. You are one of the most wonderful people to talk to, like both in DMs but also just like chat with about polls. You have such incredible insight, and we can all learn a lot from you, and I just think you're a pretty cool person as well.
Which is a very big change from early autopsy.
It was all love. It was just my professional relationship with you was different.
Yes.
Strictly love. Yeah.
I'm incapable of taking like sincerity in person to this degree, so I have to make a joke.
That's fine. You can be incapable of it. I appreciate that you are upfront and honest at least, but I will thank you for spending an hour and a half with us anyway.
It's been fun to come on and talk about one of my favorite topics, which is the voting and the history of voting, insofar as I understand it. So yeah, this was fun for me.
She says, understanding it deeper than any of us do.
We are so grateful for your insight and for your time, Liz. It's been a real pleasure to have you on and to add you to the time capsule that is Autopsy. So thank you.
You're very welcome. And thank you for letting me rant for, I don't know how long I've talked for, quite a long time.
Well, we loved it. Thank you so much. And with that, the next episode you see will probably be, well, I won't jinx it, maybe be shorter because we're going to play our voice submissions and email submissions. We had so many, we could not cram them into this now 2-hour episode. I think this might actually be our longest autopsy ever.
Our longest continuous recording. Yeah, fully expected this to happen because we are at the finale. We got the inimitable Liz on the autopsy stage, and I knew that conversation was gonna go long.
I just can't believe we had Liz on the stage. I remember talking about autopsy and not ever thinking, not only would people not show up, but also I would never have people who wanted to be on autopsy. And now I had Liz on, and that's so cool. Liz is a big deal, and I'm very, very proud and very happy. And I'm happy to have established the podcast as something stable and serious enough that people are willing to come on. Thank you again, Liz, so much. I know that you say that you will only come on once. I'm going to try really hard to change that. We'll see. I may have to employ the help of your bestie, Ren, because, man, you are too good not to talk to again, my friend. Thank you, guys, and I hope that we survive the next week. Man, Malevolent is gonna be ending in a week. Man, boy, that's a lot. 7 days from now.
We're gonna have to start thinking about series 2 starting. We're gonna be done. We're gonna be done with the finale is over. Now we have to think about series 2 is starting.
Yeah. Vol, we have to have a phone call about what we're gonna do about autopsy. Maybe I won't do autopsy for series 2. Maybe it's just too much work for me and I'm tired of it.
Are you for real?
Maybe I should stop. Maybe I should pass the torch and give it to somebody else.
Oh my god, it wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be the same.
What if I just got to be an audience member and you did all the everything?
Oh my god. Me? Being the host?
Vol Autopsy.
I don't think I can do
the
that.
The host of Autopsy.
No, I don't think I can do that. I can only write note and be funny. I can't host.
Ren says, maybe I should stop, Queen. You're rolling a nat 1 on that check. Yeah. I know. I'm not gonna put it down. I've done it this long. The momentum's already rolling. So I will be doing series 2. Thank you to everybody. Remember, in the end, it's never about certainty. It's about making a choice and moving forward. Until next time, the horrors persist.
But so do we.
Thank you, of course, to Harlan Guthrie, the sole creator of Malevolent. Without his labor of love for a story he wants to tell, we wouldn't be here. To join the live recording, submit your own message, get in touch with me, and more, visit linktree/Malevolent Autopsy. The official Invictus Discord server is open to the public and includes a channel just for Malevolent Autopsy fans. We also have our own private, patrons-only channel. Finally, thank you to Mizra, Nikki, Vol Control, and everyone who has helped create and maintain Malevolent Autopsy. These friends are also volunteers who donate time and energy to help put together this love letter to Malevolent.